Sheriff Clarke, great to have you, sir.
John, a hearty good morning to you and your listeners. You know, what I want to know is if the government shuts down, will those cats receive back pay?
That's right. Well, they certainly are well fed, and in the areas where they released them, this is a real program in D.C. and it's been effective. So they capture these feral cats, they train them by giving them food in the cage and stuff, and then they release them in high rat population areas. And so this started in January. So we're 5 months in, and everybody in those areas are reporting a reduction in the rat population. So, but then what they have, they're having a problem of getting the feral cats back because they want to put it back in the cage and take them out somewhere else, but they can't do it because they're having too much fun eating all the rats. So it's like, what are you going to do, right? But I'd rather have the feral cats running around than the rats. I think they should get released in the Capitol. What about you?
Yeah, but I think a different kind of cat. How about lions and tigers will unleash them into the Capitol to get rid of that rat infestation?
What do you think now? They've subpoenaed Hope Hicks. They subpoenaed Annie Donaldson, the Trump's lawyer. We had Corey Lewandowski on last week, and he said that he was Trump's campaign manager. He said so far he spent, get this, $500,000, $500,000 on lawyers defending himself against these subpoenas. And he's like, all I did was take a job managing a presidential campaign, and so every penny that I was paid has gone to lawyers. And his view is that the Democrats just want to bankrupt everybody that worked for Trump. What do you think of that?
Yeah, it's exactly what they're doing. Now, they know this isn't going to lead to anything. They're still running around with this, dragging this dead horse around of the Mueller witch hunt. I think it's a shame that this is affecting American citizens who are engaged in the political process, like Corey, a friend of mine. That's First Amendment protected to be involved in the political process. And now the Democrats on Capitol Hill are trying to make this a crime, all in an attempt to undo the 2016 election. Here, it's over 2 years. We're probably closer to the next election than we are from the last one, and the Democrats want to keep this going. This is a election year ploy to keep the president occupied, keep the headlines going. While we need entitlement reform out of Congress, we need an infrastructure bill out of Congress, we need debt reduction out of Congress, we need immigration fix out of Congress. I can go on and on and on with the real work that the United States Congress should be doing, and instead they're playing these political games, and it's coming at the expense of the American people, because in the long run, I think this is why China won't yield and come to an agreement on trade. They know that this president has political trouble back home. They'll just wait him out, if nothing else. I think North Korea is watching this. I think that's why Kim started up some missile testing again. I think Russia is watching this, and that's why they're engaged in some of the hijinks that they are. There was a Russian bomber jet intercepted off of Alaska the other day. I think this is all impacted by the fact that this president's under siege back here at home.
So you think there's a correlation between the Democrats' view of foreign policy and how they're trying to tie the president up with all these legal matters? You find a correlation there?
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, this is the kind of thing that will have will be a residual effect of this sort of thing. The world watches this stuff. I think there are other countries too as well, and it lessens for the countries that are on our side, it lessens the confidence that they have in relying on the United States. But again, the Democrats, they don't care about that. They don't care about the damage it's doing to this republic. They only care about political power. They're doing everything in their power to remove this president. They know they can't remove him. I wish somebody in the Trump administration would, at the highest level you'd have to go, would call their bluff and say, go ahead and impeach him, because that would spell doom, I believe, for the Democrats going into 2020. The American people do not want this president impeached. At some point, though, I think the president needs to stare him down not blink and say, go ahead and do it, because they'll never convict him anyway in the Senate. They'll never get 2/3 of the United States Senate to convict him, which is part of the process, and that's the key part of the process. And also, I hope that the Republicans are taking copious notes, because this is how the Democrats play. This is how dirty they get. Mm-hmm. They'll do anything and everything to gain political power. And I just want the Republicans to look back at the Democrats and go, you know what? We're watching you. We're taking copious notes. Wait till your guy or woman is in the White House next time. You're going to get the same treatment.
It's unbelievable what the Democrats are doing, but I am with you on this, Sheriff Clarke, 100%. And I said this in my narrative at 6 a.m. I'm in favor of the Democrats going forward with impeachment in the House. I think they should have the hearing, stop talking about it and just do it. Because, look, they did this. The Republicans did this to Clinton in 98. And when it was all said and done and he got exonerated by the Senate, or I don't know if the word is exonerated, he didn't get impeached by the Senate. They couldn't get 2/3, nowhere near that. I don't even think they got 50%. So when that was over, his approval rating went to 78%, and they won 8 seats in the House the next midterm election. So, go ahead. You want to have the sideshow. You want to put it on TV every day. You want to show the American people what your agenda is, which is all this crackpot stuff. Go ahead. Do it, and let the chips fall where they may. And I think Pelosi's under a lot of pressure to do that right now. So I'm with you on that. I want to talk about, Sheriff Clarke, an op-ed you had on Town Hall, if I may, and you titled it, "The Black Community's Holocaust." Will you elaborate on that, Sheriff Clarke?
Sure. Thanks for bringing that up. For your viewers, your listeners, they can go to Town Hall and read the entire column. But as you know, the state of Alabama passed and the governor signed an abortion bill that makes it one of the strictest in the nation. And so, of course, that caused the left to go bananas. You're seeing some other states, Georgia's done much the same, where they're shortening the time period with which an abortion can be performed. And as I always do, before I put pen to paper or open my mouth, I do my research. I went back and looked at some abortion statistics, and what I saw, it just floored me. 36% of all abortions are performed on black women. Black women only represent 14% of the population. The reason I mention that is because the Democrats are always coming up with this disparate impact argument when it comes to issues of race. I also saw that, in another research piece, since Roe v. Wade was decided in 1973, 19 million black babies have been murdered, have been slaughtered through abortion. Think about that. 19 million black babies have been murdered through abortion. And that's why I call it the Holocaust. If you look at the definition of what a Holocaust is, it's needless slaughter, reckless killing of people, and that's what abortion is.
I mean, when you call it a Holocaust and you look at the number of African-American babies that have been aborted since Roe v. Wade, what is that? What is that? What is the bigger message here? I mean, forget the Alabama law and the debate on that, but what is the bigger thing that's going on in your mind with this?
Well, if you look at who the founder of Planned Parenthood is, Margaret Sanger, she was a eugenist. She was a stone cold racist who called black people human weeds that were in need of extinction, and she tried to do it through abortion. So, if you look at it that way, it's pretty plain to see. But this is having a negative impact, I believe, on the birth rate of black babies. Go back again. Listen, 19 million black babies have been murdered through abortion since 1973. I don't think that there's any other figure that comes near that in terms of death. Not famine, not natural disasters, not war. Nothing comes near 19 million people. I'm floored by that, John. I really am. And I did not know that until I went back and did some of the research. But these are some of the things that the mainstream media, the liberal media, are not going to talk about, are not going to put out there for people to see. People need the truth, and I think that's why trends and attitudes about abortion are shifting back in favor toward protecting the unborn over the last 10 years, because more information is getting out about how hideous this process is and what they're actually doing. And so I just want people, and that's why I wrote this, I want people to know the impact that this is having on a segment of this community that people don't know about. So, one of the other things I looked up and I found is that the left likes to bring up, well, what about cases of incest and rape? And I said, no. 1.5% of abortions performed in the United States are the result of rape and incest. And I'm not going to say that's no big deal, but 1.5%, that means 98.5% of all abortions do not involve rape and incest. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about some of these other things that I mentioned. Let's talk about late-term abortion. Let's talk about partial birth abortion. Let's talk about full-term abortion when babies are delivered, like your governor there in Virginia, Northern, was talking about. Well, we'll keep it comfortable, and then we'll decide a couple days or a couple weeks later whether to kill it. Those are the things that I want to talk about in terms of abortion, not the 1.5% cases of rape or incest.
So if you just take out the 1.5% of rape or incest, which, a lot of us that are pro-life Catholic like me, I really believe that woman should have that decision to be made, because the decision to get pregnant was certainly not hers, or
sure.
In the matter of incest, it was just a bad thing. It's all bad. So I think they should have that right, and I believe in that. But if you take that number out, I mean, when you call it a Holocaust, the number of African American babies aborted is staggering. Have you looked at that? What the percentage is of blacks in America? What the percentage of it is as it relates to, say, another race, Caucasian, Asian, Hispanic?
Yeah, and I don't have it broken down that deeply, but when it comes to abortion, I believe 24% of abortions are performed on Hispanic women, and I believe that the Caucasian or white women that have abortion performed is about 19%. So when you look at the numbers, you can see that black and brown women are having abortions performed on them more than any other demographic. And I think that with Planned Parenthood and the funding, and think about this, that's another thing, is our federal government, and this includes the GOP too, who like to run around calling themselves pro-life. There's federal funding for abortion. So we have federal funding that's been involved in the killing of 19 million black babies. So when you look at all this stuff, though, and you add it all up, I agree with what you said about, that's an argument for rape or incest. I've never said that it shouldn't be, but I'm not going to let the Democrats try to make me feel bad about the Alabama abortion law because it doesn't allow for rape or incest. I agree with you. I think it should, but again, that's 1.5. So if you and I said to the Democrats and to the liberals and to the left, okay, I'll tell you what, if we put in the Alabama law, or if Alabama, I don't live there, if they put in there for rape or incest, would you approve of this law? And they would say no, because that has nothing to do with it. That's a gotcha question. That's a rabbit hole they try to drag you down to make you and I feel bad about the Alabama law, when in fact the Alabama law is going to prohibit late-term abortions. It's going to prohibit partial birth abortion, and it's going to prohibit post-birth abortion, and that's the important part of that law. So maybe Alabama goes back and cleans it up a little bit, but the rest of that law, I'm down with it, John.
Sheriff Clarke, if you looked at this a different way, it could almost be called genocide. If you looked at it, if you just turned it upside down and looked at the percentage and the number of African American babies aborted in the U.S. since Roe v. Wade, and I have to look the percentage up, because I would think that it is a dramatically higher percentage than it is for any other race, and so it's almost like a limitation on the expansion of the black race, and it's mind-boggling to me how blacks would be in favor of abortions running amok into the third trimester, into, like Ralph Northam said, after the baby is born, you then make a decision. I mean, how does that jive? How does that reconcile itself?
Yeah, it doesn't, and it shows the lack of a soul. I think it shows the lack of any sort of moral compass on the part of those American people. And I think it's a shame that it's come to this. And it's, New York State, by the way, just passed a law and signed into law by the governor that allows late-term abortion. So you see how the left keeps pushing the needle the other way. It first started out with Roe v. Wade, as you know, with cases of rape or incest, and it started with in the first trimester. Okay? Most people still didn't agree with that. I shouldn't say most. A lot of people still didn't agree with that. But then look at how far we've come since 1973 in Roe v. Wade. And I went back and read some of the majority opinion on Roe v. Wade. And it was decided, I think it was 7-2. So it was pretty, a pretty good amount of the justices agreed with it. I think they were wrong. Don't forget there were 2 dissents. I think that it is time for the United States Supreme Court to go back and visit this and not to overturn it. I don't think they're going to overturn it. But what I think needs to happen, and I put this in the column, return this back to the states. Let the states decide. This should be a states' rights issue. And if Alabama wants to do that, fine. If New York wants to say we're going to allow late term, I don't think that's okay. But if I'm going to say it should be a states' rights issue, well, then the people in New York get to decide on that, not somebody like me living in Wisconsin. But I would push for stricter laws in my own state. One of the arguments, too, that I don't think we should get bogged down in, it's a rabbit hole, is the number of weeks that should be allowed to go by before a woman loses, and I don't want to call it a choice because it's not, but to have an abortion performed. We're getting bogged down. Should it be 8 weeks? Should it be 12 weeks? Should it be 21 weeks? I'll tell you the definition I like, and it's mentioned in the Supreme Court decision, by the way. When a fetus is viable. Now, some states, I think it's Georgia, after a heartbeat's detected, they said no more abortion. I'm down with that. Viability, and I don't mean outside the womb. If there's a heartbeat detected, then you know what? No more abortion. So, but let each state decide that. Make it a states' rights rule, since the United States Supreme Court has said that babies in the womb have no constitutional rights. Well, if it's not a constitutional issue, then it's reserved for the states under the 10th Amendment.
I couldn't agree more. Really, though, and I appreciate you doing this column. I tweeted out, go to townhall.com. You can read Sheriff Clarke's column. He calls it the Great African-American Holocaust. And it's a pretty deep piece, and I would encourage everybody reading it just to get an understanding of it. But we're out of time for this segment. I want to thank Sheriff David Clarke for being with us. More information, go to americasheriff.com. That's americasheriff.com. He's also on the board of advisors at We Build the Wall, Inc. You can go to webuildthewall.org, webuildthewall.org. Sheriff, thanks for being with us. I always appreciate the time,